So you get to the end of the sales interview and the person that's interviewing you brings up compensation. And they mention that there's a base salary, but it goes away after 6 months after the training period, and then you're commission only. Your eyes drop, your jaw opens, you're like, oh my God, they get their cake and they get to eat it too. I'm gonna be working commission only. You leave the interview, you don't look back, you're no longer interested in the job, and that's the way it goes. But did you actually make the right decision? Or should you give this potential job a second look? In this video, I'm gonna go over the commission-only sales job and how you should look at it and determine whether or not this is a good fit for you. Additionally, I'm gonna go over the compensation paradigm to go over the trade-offs between a straight commission job and one where there's a base salary plus a commission and explain how that works. Then I'm gonna go over why you shouldn't probably be too afraid of a commission-only sales job, and then finally the self-discipline that it'll take to fulfill that type of role. First off, let's go over the compensation paradigm because this will help shed some light on this. So imagine, if you will, a three-legged stool, and that three-legged stool needs to stay in balance in order for management to be correctly compensating someone. So one of the legs is decision rights. That's the rights that the employee has to make on behalf of management or not on behalf of management. So we're always trying to align those decision rights with management. The next is how the person's compensated. And then finally, how is that person monitored overall to make sure that they're achieving management's objectives? Now let's start off with a normal assembly line job. A person's working on an automobile assembly line and their job is to attach a part to the car that's rolling past. That person can either choose to attach that part and attach that part correctly, or they can choose not to attach the part. What happens if they don't attach the part? The next person in the assembly line that needs to kind of build onto that part then notices, pulls the line to stop the assembly line. Management is quickly alerted that that person has not done their job, and management will take corrective action. So now let's say, okay, we're gonna pay that person $25 an hour to install that part. The advantage of paying that person $25 an hour is it's way easier to hire somebody, because if I say we're gonna pay you $2 per part that's installed on the vehicle, then people don't really know what that means. So they prefer the security of knowing that they're receiving $25 an hour. Additionally, management kind of controls the speed in which that assembly line operates. Since the worker really isn't giving any control over how he can make more or less money by doing a good job versus a bad job, there's really no reason to pay the person in that manner. It's better for all if they just pay the worker $25 per hour. Let's look at real estate agents. Now, a real estate agent, their business is outside of the office. The most successful realtors will never be in the office because they'll be out either meeting people to get and obtain new listings, or they will be out meeting with customers, showing them houses or hosting open houses. But the last place a good realtor wants to be is in the office. So therefore, it's very difficult for management to monitor and control what a real estate agent's doing. Additionally, a lot of different realtors do things completely different and are successful in different tracks that they run. You know, you can have a high-end realtor that sells very few houses, but they're millions of dollars, but you could also have a realtor that specializes in kind of mid-level or lower level houses that have high repetition of transactions, and both make the same amount of money for the firm. With that said, the monitoring for a real estate agent would be very difficult to do. Additionally, they work nights and weekends a lot of times, and therefore it would be very much impossible for management to really monitor what they're doing. So on that three-legged paradigm, because the monitoring is so low, it's very important to make it so that that compensation and decision rights are aligned with management. So how do we do that? Management and the realtor only get paid when that realtor sells a house. So they're completely aligned, because if the realtor doesn't get paid, management doesn't get paid, and vice versa. So we can see the difference between the two compensation structures. One, an assembly line worker where there's high levels of monitoring, the other a real estate agent, which is probably the lowest of all monitoring. Hopefully that instills in you how management looks at compensation and why commission-only structures work. My own personal experience was I ran a sales force for a period of time. Now, when I originally started managing that sales force, it was a base plus commission sales force. And I knew that sales forces perform best when they were commission only. So my goal was to move my sales force over to commission only. This is challenging because salespeople hate to give up that base salary because that's their security blanket. You know, when they have a bad week or a bad month, they're still getting that base salary in order to survive. A lot of salespeople are used to having their commission structure tinkered with every few years. Management does this because salespeople are typically advocates for their customers. So they will do anything that they can to make that customer happy as long as it doesn't cost them commission. So if they can give a customer some form of discount or credit or additional product, they'll do that every day of the week as long as it doesn't hurt their commission. So a lot of times management will have to go back in, change a program to remove how salespeople are doing something, because salespeople are always trying to beat the system in order to take advantage of what's going on for the betterment of their customer. And so those have to be closed. So typically when management's closing a loophole, it's hurting the salesperson's compensation because they're maybe not able to give giveaways as much or the freebies that they like to give to keep their customers happy. So salespeople are typically very hesitant because salespeople have seen this happen over and over again to them. So we let them choose, but once they switched over to commission only, they could never switch back. And what we found was it took about 30% more when that pay commission only was coming in about 30% more month after month, and they were looking at that. Eventually they would finally say, well, it's time for me to switch over to commission only. This is just costing me too much money. Now there were some people that were so risk averse, they would never get rid of that base salary. And as a result, it cost them tens of thousands of dollars per year. And that's just the nature of how people operate. Some people just need that base salary in order to work. Now, I advocate against that because if you're not performing anyway for that company for a period of 3 or 4 months, the company's probably going to let you go. So is it really a security blanket to have that base salary? Because if you're not performing, you might not be with that company any longer. In terms of sales, if you have a quality product, we will kind of operate off the 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 rule. So 1/3 of the people have an immediate need for your product, are likely to purchase it, and all you have to do is basically present your solution to them because you're fulfilling an immediate need. There is a third where it takes a skilled person to figure out the problem the person has and kind of figure out how your product will solve their problem and kind of talk that person into it. So that's the 1/3 where it requires skill. And then there's the other third where you're never going to be able to sell the product anyway. So if you're hustling that 1/3 and uncovering that 1/3, generally on just commission only, you're fine compared to not having the base salary, because if you're working on a routine basis and maintaining good sales discipline, you'll be fine just selling to that 1/3 people, even though you might not be that skilled yet, and it may take a year to develop that amount of skill. If you look at commission-only sales jobs, the benefit is you're not going to be monitored very much. Usually you can make more money. Thirdly, if you're not performing with a commission plus base salary compensation structure anyway, you're probably not going to be there very long. I personally am inclined to make the more money and go with a commission-only sales job and not be afraid of it. So I really think people should think over, if you're on a base salary plus commission, they're going to want to know the number of calls you made that day. They're going to want to know the number of meetings you've set, the results of those meetings. Or if you're commission only, it's going to be a much lighter level of monitoring that you're going to experience. When you're getting started in the sales, if you haven't built that discipline yet and you're worried about that, obviously that's one factor. The sales training, ideally you are getting some period of time where you're being trained into the industry. But just know overall, after you make it through that first year, typically you're going to be happier in a commission-only sales role rather than a commission plus base, given all other factors being the same. Hopefully this video has found you well. Hopefully it's helped you kind of at least open your eyes to at least considering a commission-only sales job. If you like this content, please click the subscribe button so you can get more information like this. And again, have a great day. So how much is the base salary again?